Russia tries to encircle the Ukrainians in the city of Avdiivka, right in front of Donetsk city itself, while the Israeli armed forces clearly prepare for a ground invasion into Gaza. Hello and welcome. We start with a quick update towards the Israeli-Palestinian or Israeli-Hamas war. Right now, Israel has said that over 1,300 Israelis have died in the terrorist attack from last Saturday, while the health ministry that is controlled by Hamas reports over 1,400 people dead in the Gaza Strip under the bombardment of the Israeli Air Force. At the same time, in the north, the Hezbollah has started to attack northern Israel, still to a limited extent. They also have attacked an Israeli APC over the border with an anti-tank guided missile and have destroyed it. Israel is reacting to that and striking Hezbollah positions also to a limited extent so far. At the same time, there are reports that Israel has struck the airports of Damascus and Aleppo, supposedly to prevent reinforcements by Iran. At least that's one interpretation that I found, but it's probably also meant to punish Iran for its aid towards the attacks against Israel. When we go to the situation before we go to the situation in Ukraine, right now, the Israeli side has retaken all the control over its territory and is mobilizing along the Gaza Strip. As of now, there doesn't seem to have been any serious incursion into the Gaza Strip, but it only seems to be a matter of time. Let's go to the Ukrainian war. We start in the north. There are Russian attacks continuing in the direction of Sinkivka and to the east of it. The Russians claim that they have successes up to 1.5 kilometers. I cannot confirm anything close to this. I do not see any recent Russian successes whatsoever. They also say they have been successful in advances towards Makivka and Nevske, so roughly in this area here. I can document some recent advances, but not in the last 2 days, so I'm not sure. They might have advanced further. That's well within the realm of possibility, but I cannot actually confirm it myself. Ukrainians are reported to have counterattacked in the north close to Sinkivka. They also attacked in the Serebryanske forest and close to Makivka. There are also Ukrainian counterattacks being reported. I do not see any serious claim that they have been successful, so the Ukrainian counterattacks seem to have failed. A Ukrainian military spokesperson said on the 11th of October alone, 30 attacks by the Russians were done in the direction of Kupiansk and of Liman. So basically in this area, and then this on one day alone, 30 individual attacks, and the Ukrainians are reporting that the Russians bring in heavy reinforcements to the area, so we would have to expect further attacks and probably advances in the near future. South of the Seversky Donetsk, the Ukrainians are claiming that they have had some success east of Klishivka and Andriivka. So in this area here, they claim they have had some advances to the east. I cannot really confirm it. It seems that they have pushed away the Russians a little bit from the railroad track, which is here, but to any extent that they have managed to take a foothold on the other side of the railway, I cannot confirm at this very moment. Avdiivka is where the majority of the fighting happened in the last few days. The Russians tried to encircle the Ukrainians here in that stronghold, which is right next to Donetsk city, by cutting to the west from Krasnohorivka and attacking north from Vodiane, basically creating an envelopment in here. They have been somewhat successful. A Ukrainian officer confirmed that they reached the northeast of Stepove, but he didn't say exactly where. So they advanced somewhat in that direction. As we can see on the map, we do have some geolocalizations here. When we see its videos are geolocalized at this position, which is right here at Stepove. And another one is also showing us successes close to Siverne. We have the video, the images here. Excuse me, we have the images here at the Siverne, the advances at Siverne, where the Russians advanced in the south to the east of the town already. So the Russians are confirmed to have been here, which is northeast of Stepove, and Siverne, they have been confirmed to be in this area here. We do not know if they managed to take a foothold, but it seems to be clear that neither Siverne nor Stepove have fallen at this very moment. The initial reports by Russian mill bloggers, for instance Riba, claimed that the Russians had already reached Berdichi. There is no proof whatsoever, as I said in the last situational picture, that it's likely that this is just that the Russians just made it up. As we take from source-wise, when the Russians attack, we trust the Ukrainian sources more when it comes to them admitting defeat and vice versa. Image proof doesn't show the Russians having reached either Berdichi, nor Stepove, nor Siverne in this regard. So while they have had some successes, and we do have, for instance, here a Ukrainian military blogger confirming advances in this area too, and they seem to get closer to this mount here, which would be a problem if the Ukrainians lose it, as it's overlooking the whole area here and the lines of communications in this point. While we do see some successes, there is no encirclement happening at this very moment. At the same time, the Ukrainians say that the Russians were using 3 battalions for this, and with full support with artillery and with tanks. According to open source intelligence, at least 36 items of heavy weaponry was destroyed, meaning tanks, IFVs, APCs, so armored vehicles. At least 36 Russian armored vehicles were destroyed in 2 days of fighting with the attempt, as the Russians tried to crush the Ukrainians in this region. While they had some minor successes, the breakthrough they probably expected didn't happen. Further south, we have reports from attacks at Marinka, and the Russians also attacked at Pobieda and Novomikhailivka. Ukraine counterattacked at Novomikhailivka. Neither attack has shown any success. The Ukrainians have been somewhat successful, though in the direction of Mikilske, right next to Vuleda. There is a geolocalization here where a video shows Ukrainians, and it's right to the northeast of Mikilske, so more or less in this area here. They're getting closer and closer to the town, but again, very small advances overall. Further west to the area where the oblasts of Donetsk and Zaporizhzhia meet, south of Velika Novosilka, it's basically a stalemate. There's still fighting going on. I cannot confirm any change in territory. The Russians claim they managed to push the Ukrainians somewhat away from Priutne. They don't claim a breakthrough or anything. They just say that we pushed them a little bit away. I do not have visual evidence of this, nor do I have Ukrainian confirmation. So as of now, it's nothing but a Russian rumor as of this point. When we go to the area of Orekhiv, south of Orekhiv, it's the same. More or less, the Ukrainians claim that they improved their tactical positions at Robotine, whatever that means. It's a nice way of saying we have successes, but we can't show you much, I guess. And it's reported that the Ukrainians attacked at Robotine, Novoprokopivka, and Verbove. So basically, they are still attacking in this area here. I cannot document fresh Ukrainian successes, though. The Russians claim that they counterattacked at both Verbove and Novofedorivka, basically in this area, and they claim that they managed to push the Ukrainians somewhat back. I do not have proof of that either. Vasilivka, it's somewhat similar. The Russians claim they did a surprise attack there and managed to advance several hundred meters between Sherebianki and Piatikhatki. Basically in this area here, where the front line has not moved since initial Ukrainian successes at the beginning of the counteroffensive. They claim with surprise counterattacks, the Ukrainians were pushed back several hundred meters. Again, as usually, this report, no confirmation if that has been successful. When we go to the Dnipro, it's the usual story of the last weeks. Russian military bloggers saying a big Ukrainian invasion over the Dnipro is coming, but we do not see any actual proof, and it's still somewhat doubtful whether the Ukrainians might actually do that, even though the stalemate, the slow advance that is crawling and that's close to a standstill south of Orikhiv might lead the Ukrainians to think about alternatives to get motion back into their counteroffensive. Generally speaking, when we summarize the current events, the Russian attacks close to Avdiivka here show us that despite all the claims from analysts, despite the news we had in the past, the Russians are clearly still able to create reserves and to concentrate them and to use them. So despite all the indications that they are running out of reserves, that clearly doesn't seem to be the case, at least not to the full extent. At the same time, we have not just a surprise attack with significant forces at Avdiivka. The Ukrainians themselves claim that the Russians have massive local superiority. The Ukrainians themselves claim that the Russians sent significant reinforcements to the front line in Luhansk, north of the Siversky Donetsk. All of the signs that the Russians have not run out of reserves as initial hopes were being spread like a month or longer ago. Russian military bloggers also say that their counter-battery fire has been very successful close to Avdiivka. One claimed that it was the strongest artillery preparation he has witnessed in the whole war so far. So far, that accompanied that Russian surprise attack. It also showed that the Russians were willing to commit a significant amount of heavy weaponry, of armored vehicles, unlike past attacks in the last few months where they were kept in the background and infantry was the majority that was supposed to advance here. Here in this case, the Russians sent their heavy equipment, but they also lost a lot of it. They also, Russian military bloggers emphasize how effective their electronic warfare has been. A lot of this I cannot confirm at this very point. I have not read that the counter battery fire has been so successful. I do not have a Ukrainian admission for that. I do not have claims by the Ukrainians that they are electronic warfare, that the Russian electronic warfare has been so effective. But at least this is what I find now from the pro-Russians. The Russians also say that the cooperation and the coordination between the different levels of command and between the different branches was exceptionally good in this area, and this was one part of the, as they call it, successes so far, even though the ground doesn't show us too many successes yet. Generally though, it seems a clear sign that the Russians try different tactics and try to learn from their mistakes. Not much of a surprise here. Only an idiot would think that the Russians are incapable of learning. And the military bloggers, the Russians ones, also emphasized that the tactics in advancing in that area were flexible and nowhere close to meat attacks, basically just pushing men into the meat grinder. No, they were going forward in steps and withdrawing when the pressure was up. The artillery was supporting them, basically leaving an impression that the attack there was well planned and well executed from their side. But then again, the successes that they have to show for are really limited. We're talking about a few hundred meters here and there, that's in total. Still though, while the Russian military bloggers are optimistic, at the same time, one, for instance, I think it was War Gonzo, said that it's not the time yet for victory marches to be played, and that the Ukrainians are fighting back tooth and nail, and or it was someone else, but because War Gonzo, I have here in my notes, also said that while the initial attacks have been successful, the Ukrainians will now react and it's going to be more difficult. So initial successes are more or less confirmed by visual evidence as well, but also heavy losses from the Russian side. The Russians themselves diminished their expectations of a quick victory at Avdiivka fairly much already and expect to have more or less a stalemate at this point. But at the same time, we need to acknowledge that the Russians are still able to create reserves, to concentrate forces, to surprise the Ukrainians tactically, and to advance in points at different parts of the front line, despite all the hopes that have been published to the contrary. From the Crimean Peninsula, we have some news as well. The Russian corvette Pavel Dershavin was supposedly, according to Ukrainian sources, ran into a Russian mine. So it ran into its own mine and in front of the peninsula. So far, I have not seen any proof of this, whether this is true, whether the corvette has sunk or whether it's heavily damaged. At least as of now, I have not found any proof of this to be true whatsoever. There's also news from Russian opposition media about the troop generations. They are saying that 1,000 prisoners have been recruited for the Redat PMC, which is run by the Ministry of Defense. According to what the opposition media are claiming, the prisoners were recruited with the promise of amnesty after 6 months, but apparently once the 6 months ran out, they were forced to sign up for an additional 1-year contract with the Ministry of Defense. So that's probably not what they bargained for, and that should have a significant effect for the morale of the fighters that have been recruited this way. In the political sphere, we also have some information, some news. Ramzan Kadyrov, the head of the Chechen Republic, said that the presidential elections in Russia shouldn't be even held because Putin is the best and he should just unanimously be confirmed. Peskov, the Kremlin speaker, then said, no, basically, but it's nice and all of this, but the constitution is different and there has to be a vote and all of this, showing us that the Russians at least try to still keep up the impression of being a country with the rule of law. The Russian Duma also called the International Affairs Committee to discuss leaving the test agreement, the agreement to stop nuclear testing. Basically, they want the International Affairs Committee to decide how to leave that agreement or if it should be left, and which would allow Russia to do again nuclear tests, which have not been done in decades by the big powers. Armenia. And that's also in connection here. Obviously, Armenia doesn't join the CSTO maneuvers in Kyrgyzstan. Armenia is still a member of the Collective Security Treatment Organization, which is more or less called the Russian NATO. As Armenia feels betrayed by it in connection with the Azerbaijani attacks on Armenian territory in September last year, as well as the lack of Russian support in regards to Nagorno-Karabakh, Armenia is now clearly on a way to separate itself, to leave the Russian sphere of influence, both by no longer joining the maneuvers. The Prime Minister Pashinyan refused to join a meeting of the heads of the alliance in Kyrgyzstan as well, and Armenia has just ratified the agreement that would force them to arrest Putin according to the international arrest warrant of the International Criminal Court. Also, Pashinyan said the peacekeepers, the Russian peacekeepers that were in Nagorno-Karabakh should go directly to Russia, not even come to Armenia anymore, basically saying we want less Russian soldiers in Armenia, not more. There's also some news about international support. The US are delivering AIM-9M Sidewinder. While the missile can be used in the NASAMS air defense system that is already being delivered, there are some speculations if the US has somehow managed to get MIM-72 Chaparral. Those are older air defense systems that the US have used in the past that use Sidewinder missiles or a version of them for close-range air defense. The US have no longer don't use them anymore for quite some time, and supposedly don't have any of those anymore in their stockpile, but there are several other nations still using them or recently having decommissioned them. So it's within quite possible that the US managed to refurbish a couple of those systems and give them to Ukraine. At least that's one of the speculations in the military sphere press that are speculating in this regard. On the other hand, it could just be for the usage in NASAM system, and if I'm not completely sure, IRIS-T can also fire Sidewinders as well. Germany is also sending additional aid. The whole package is over 1 billion, and Germany is going to deliver another Patriot battery, more Leopard 1 main battle tanks, Cheetah, Gepard, self-propelled artillery. Several 100,000 rounds of artillery shells are also being promised and ordered from the defense industry. So there's additional help coming despite the focus currently being on Israel. If you enjoyed this situation report, then please hit the thumbs up button. It really helps with the algorithm, which somehow punishes me over the last few videos. And leave a comment. What do you think about the current developments? And would you like to hear more about Israel? We will obviously accompany both conflicts in the coming weeks and months, as we've done in the past with just Ukraine here. So if you like to stay informed in the way I'll handle this and you're new here, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future videos. This channel is only possible because of the support of viewers like you. If you like to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description. Thank you very much to everyone already supporting this channel. And that's it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.